if you are traveling abroad and you're an international student, this will take a while to get used to. Okay, I don't want to get hate on this. It is quite like famous about the UK, which I don't really like. That's just what I've observed. I'm not trying to shade on British people.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
Hello everyone! So for today's video, I'm going to make a video talking about the cultural shock experience I have had in England from a Chinese / Asian girl's perspective. It is super useful for any international student that is traveling abroad, especially if you're going to the UK, and it might be also really interesting for like a local British person to watch to see what difference your country has compared to other places. This is mainly focused between Hong Kong and England because obviously I'm from Hong Kong, and these are the list of things that I just was a bit like, whoa, like I'm really not used to this. This is really weird that I've experienced in England. Some are just quite weird, which is obviously normal for local people. So if you are going to travel to England this September, then you have to watch this because it's super interesting. So the first difference that came to my mind is that there are recycling bins in British households. What I meant is that basically in like a Chinese culture, we only have bins for everything. We don't split our trash into different categories like plastic, food waste, and metal and glass and etc. We just put everything in the same bin and we just collect all the bin and put it together and just put it in the bin station. But in a British culture, households in England have separate bins for separate things. So basically, if you want to throw away plastic, you have to put it in this specific bin, which I think is a superb idea. And I hope that Hong Kong will incorporate this idea too, because obviously we have recycling bins in Hong Kong, but then it's only on the streets, not in our households. In our households, we only have one bin that puts everything together, which I think is kind of stupid, and I really think that we should learn from the British people and kind of just start recycling from our home because that's where most of the trash is collated from. Next, oh no, turn on iPad. Okay, next cultural shock factor that I have came in mind is that there are no air conditioning in UK houses. Yes, if you are traveling abroad and you're an international student, this will take a while to get used to. You should thank me that I've told you now so you won't get disappointed and trying to find an air conditioning in your dorm or your flat in the UK because that does not exist. Period. Slash full stop. There's too international this channel. I don't even know what English to use. There's only heaters to warm you up in the cold, but there's no air conditioning to cool you down in the heat. But it's not really necessary and you will get used to it. Normally we just open the window when it's super stuffy or super warm in our room, and yeah, that's a thing. Third is that a lot of, like, let's just say all, I want to say all of, oh my god, I thought there's a spider in my room but it's outside. Okay, thank god. Okay, all of UK people uses dryers and dishwashers, which is obviously not weird because it's quite universal. But then me personally at home, I don't use dishwasher and I don't use dryers. I feel like most Chinese people, they still hang their clothes out and just let it dry through, natural ways like wind, sun, etc. Because my family, my parents are really traditional and they still use this like clothes rack to dry the clothes, and they don't really like to use dryers. But obviously in the UK, no one just dries their clothes and put it outside in their garden to dry their clothes. They use dryers, which isn't a thing in China / Hong Kong. I don't know about Asia because Asia is too broad. And they use a lot of dishwasher, and normally in like Chinese culture, we wash our dishes ourselves and we clean them up ourselves, and it's like a chore for kids to do, to clean the bowls and dishes, which is great for discipline and etc. But this is not a thing in the UK. They always use very technological items. So yeah. Okay, fourth is that, okay, I don't want to get hate on this, but I feel like this is more like universal, but I've seen more of this in the UK. Like I'm not saying Hong Kong people never do this. Of course people do this, but in the UK I see it more often, which is jaywalking. Like everywhere I go in the UK, people never wait. They just kind of just walk when there's no car. But obviously it's quite logical. If there's no car, then you will walk because you don't want to waste your time. Time is super precious. But I see it so often in the UK that I just feel like traffic lights is just no use because we just walk across whenever we want, obviously when there's no car. But in Hong Kong, people do wait for the traffic light. It just, some people might not want to and they just walk, but then people normally just wait and they don't follow that person who crosses. But in the UK, if one person crosses when it's red light, everyone crosses with that one person. That's just what I've observed. I'm not trying to shade on British people because that is not what I'm saying. Everyone across the globe do jaywalk. I jaywalk personally too because time is precious once again, but I do see that more often in the UK. Fifth is that power outlets in the UK normally has a switch on it. What I'm saying is that the plugs, you can turn it on and turn it off. So basically in Hong Kong, it's just a plug. You put it in, it's on. You pull it out, it's off. But in the UK, you can always just keep your plug in the socket and just turn it on and off using a button next to the socket. But obviously that is genius because like in Hong Kong, you always have to just pull the plug out of the socket just to save electricity. Next is that there are less tall buildings in the UK compared to Hong Kong. Of course, Hong Kong is very famous for the skyscrapers and the metropolitan international city. Everything you see in like a promotional video of Hong Kong includes all the skyscrapers by the sea. But I'm just saying this in like a Hong Kong girl perspective. It was just kind of weird walking into a city where there's no tall buildings at all when throughout my whole life I've been surrounded by extremely tall buildings that just go up to like 122 floors. But I just want to tell you guys that UK is a very short city, like especially Sheffield because it's less developed compared to London and Manchester. There might be more taller buildings in Manchester/London, but tallest building isn't very tall compared to the average building height in Hong Kong. And the next thing is that all ATM in the UK you can use basically. If you have a credit card, debit card, you can just use whatever ATM. Because fun fact, in Hong Kong or maybe like in most Chinese cities, I'm not sure, but for sure in Hong Kong, you can only use the ATM that is issued by your bank. So for example, if I hold an HSBC credit card, I can't use like a, I don't know, Standard Chartered ATM because it's different banks. But in the UK, it's quite universal. If you have a Barclays card, you can use an HSBC ATM. Next is that UK people have a lot of slangs. If you didn't know yet, I feel like that is one really special thing about UK is that they have so many slangs. Like I've picked up a lot throughout living in the UK for a year now. Like scran is like good food, and then bear is very, so it's like I'm bare bored as I'm very bored. It's just quite weird, but when you talk to like a really local British people, you might not even understand what they're saying because their English is so British slang English. There's so many words that's just like what. But yeah, if you're interested, you can just search up British slang and there will be tons. Okay, next is that it is quite like famous about the UK, which I don't really like, but UK has a really very famous symbolization is that it always rains. It is true, but it doesn't always rain. There are also days that it doesn't rain, obviously, or else it will be flooding. But I'm not disagreeing that it's quite bad, the climate. It's always quite gloomy and dark, and sunny days are quite rare in the UK, which you have to get used to. But I'm not really complaining because people there are still quite friendly and there's quite a lot to do in malls, which doesn't need to, you know, be dictated by weather. But parks and stuff are always filled with people when there's a bit of sun. They just really cherish the sun, unlike Hong Kong. Like we hate the sun to some extent because it's so hot and it's annoying. It's actually so hot out here. Like I low-key feel I'm gonna melt soon. Look how glowy my skin is. Is that sweat or is it glow? I don't even know. If the sun is out all the time, it just burns you. But in the UK, people pray for the sun. Last but not least, this is not a cultural shock for me, but might be for other people from China, which is that UK cars drive on the left. If I'm not wrong, I feel like UK and Hong Kong are one of the rare places on earth that have car driving on the left side of the road, because most of the other places on earth, car drive on the right side of the road, including US and China and other places, I feel like. But yeah, that is it with all of things that I kind of just thought about that just gave me like a shocking factor about the UK, and it's just quite interesting to share with you guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video as much as I have, thinking about all the weird factors and examples of a cultural shock. It's always really interesting seeing how another country is so much more different than your home country, which you never really notice until you kind of live there for more than 3 to 4 months, and you just slowly just kind of peeps through and like, wow. With all that being said, UK is a wonderful place to be in, and I cannot wait to be back. Hong Kong as well, actually, I love Hong Kong. But yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Bye!
Slowly kisses passing by the river. I've been missing your strawberry kiss, 'cause nothing as sweet the taste still drive me crazy.
Hey.
My